Hey everybody, welcome back to our series on the armor of God. If you guys haven't watched the other days of this series, then I strongly encourage that you do. Today we're going to be talking about the shield of faith, which is something I'm very excited to talk about because faith is it's paramount in our identity as Christians and is really at times all that we have in life. And so starting in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 16, I'll read, "In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one." So when I read this, I thought of the movie The 300, right? As one does, because in this film you have the 300 Spartans at the Battle of Thermopylae against the Persian army of like 120,000 to 300,000. Like it's a crazy imbalance. And there's a narrow way that the pass of Thermopylae. On the right side you have the ocean, on the left side you have the cliff. And so in this, the Persians, they sent a little army to kind of contest and test the Spartans, and they got rid of them. They threw them off the cliff. And so then what the Persians did is they shot a bunch of arrows. They shot so many arrows that it turned day to night. There was no light coming through all the arrows. And so the Spartans in the scene, they put their shield up and they're all under their shield, and you can see their faces, and they start laughing, right? Because there's so many arrows raining down and they're laughing. They're under their shields. And so that's what I think of when I read this. Our shield of faith protects us from the battle, or in our spiritual warfare, against just whatever the enemy has to throw at us. And so when I started reading this, I was like, well, what is faith? And luckily, Hebrews 11 conveniently titled The Hall of Faith gives us a definition for this. Hebrews 11 reads, "Now faith is a confidence in what we hope for, and assurance about what we do not see." And then it continues on to it goes through a lot of stories in the Bible that have had faith. And so if you guys after this have time, I encourage that you go through, read Hebrews 11. It's very, very powerful message on faith. There's a ton of stories in here, as you'll see. But so proceeding on from here, it says, "By faith Abel brought God a better offering than Cain did. By faith Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear built an ark to save his family. By faith Abraham, when God tested him, offered Isaac as a sacrifice. He who had embraced the promises was about to sacrifice his one and only son." Obviously there's a ton more stories in here, and even that quotation, they were kind of picked out. So if you were following along, I was skipping some lines. But based off of these stories, there's kind of 2 points I want to make for the reason of their faith. And the first one is that they're not home. So starting in Hebrews 11, verse 13, it says, "All these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth. People who say such things show that they are looking for a country of their own. If they had been thinking of the country they had left, they would have opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Therefore God is not ashamed to call them their God, for he has prepared a city for them." And so reading that, it's clear that as these people were walking in their faith, right, they weren't really sure exactly what they were about to do, what was about to happen. But in the very least, they knew that this earth is not their home. their home is heaven, their home is eternity. And so what happens here, at the very least, the very best that they can do is to turn people to God. And so like the materialistic things, all that stuff, it's dust. From dust it comes, into dust it will return, right? And so they had confidence and assurance that God would bring them into their heavenly home that is yet unseen. Then, from verse 1, assurance about what they do not see. And so I wanted to go into Abraham a little bit more. And so when he had Isaac, God had promised Abraham that he was going to have a son, Isaac. He was going to be like a very prosperous. Like he's going to have a bunch of descendants, right? So there's that promise from God. And so when Isaac was born, Abraham was over 100, Sarah was over 90. And so then came God's second call to Abraham, which was in Genesis chapter 22, verse 2, it reads, "Take your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains I will tell you about." Which leads me to my second point, which is that they are not God. So at this point, Abraham's kind of like conflicted with these two ideas. And so Tim Keller put it this way: God is holy. Our sin means that Isaac's life is forfeit, yet God is also a God of grace. He has said he wants to bless the world through Isaac. How can God be both holy and just and still graciously fulfill his promises of salvation? Now, the reason, it says, Isaac's life is forfeit, is because of the way that the sacrifices at the time were atoned for, or the sins at the time were atoned for. So, at the time, the firstborn son was paramount. It was very important. He got majority of the inheritance. He was kind of the pride of the family. So a lot of the times when you see a lot of the times in the Old Testament when you see it was the firstborn son would be killed, is because of the atonement of sins of the family was put on the firstborn son. And so in Genesis chapter 22 verse 5, Abraham says this to his servants: "Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship and then we will come back to you." So at the end it says, "We will come back to you." And so at the time, that little phrase there expresses Abraham's faith in that moment, right? He waited for so long to get his son Isaac. He waited decades on this promise from God, and he finally has it. And there's a real possibility for Isaac to be an idol here. And so he, even God says, when he is talking in Genesis, in verse 3, it says, "Isaac, whom you love." It is well known that he longed for the son. He loves his son. And now God's asking him to sacrifice him, and he has faith and confidence in what God had promised him, which was that he was going to, prosperity is going to come from Isaac. He had faith, he had confidence, he had assurance in what was yet unseen. And he told his servant that we will come back. He was not sure how both the sin was going to be atoned for and the promise was going to be kept in his mind. But we're not God, right? And so the things that we could come up with are nothing compared to what God can come up with. And that's something that we can put our faith in, something we have confidence in, what we hope for, assurance for what we do not see. Which reminds me of Proverbs chapter 3 verse 5 and 6. "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, in all your ways submit to him, and he will make straight your paths." But after that, they go up onto the mountain and they build the altar, and Abraham ties up Isaac, and then an angel of the Lord stops him and says, "Do not lay a hand on the boy, for now I know that you fear God." And it's so paramount in our faith to fear God. It's not the fear that we understand it. It's reverence. It's holy fear. It's healthy fear. It's a fear that doesn't push you away, to cower away from Him. It's a fear that brings you closer. A fear of what will happen if I fall away from God. And I read a book, it's called, from John Bevere, called The Awe of God, which is I highly encourage that you read that book if you do get a time. But one of the ways that I think of, or try and visualize the fear of the Lord, is Isaiah chapter 6. In Isaiah chapter 6, starting in verse 1. In the year that King Uzziah, I saw the Lord high and exalted, seated on the throne, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him were seraphim, each with 6 wings. With 2 wings that covered their faces, with 2 wings they covered their feet, and with 2 they were flying. And they were calling to one another, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of His glory." And all the sounds of their voices, the doorposts and thresholds shook, and the temple was filled with smoke. And so I just wanted to point some things out here. These seraphim, they had 6 wings. With 2 they covered their eyes, 2 they covered their feet, and with 2 they were flying. These seraphim, these angels, were made to worship God. God is so holy, He's so glorious, that the angels that were made to worship Him could not stand to look at Him without dying. They were singing, "Holy, holy, holy." That third emphasis of holy, it's not necessarily that they were repeating holy 3 times. It was that they were saying holy with such emphasis. It was recorded as them saying it 3 times. And when I think of it, I'm thinking as in math terms, to a power. So holy cubed, 10 to the first is 10, 10 squared is 100, 10 cubed is 1,000. So this holy, holy, holy is it's like holy cubed. I don't know, but and then in verse 4 it says, "At the sound of their voices, the doorposts and the thresholds shook. The temple was filled with smoke." And to just imagine this, that the temple of the temple of God, this holy temple, they were saying holy so loud. These beings made to worship God, who couldn't bear to look at Him, were saying holy so loud that the sturdiest foundational parts of the temple shook. And to just have that image in your mind and to reinforce it routinely is very, very powerful. It gives you a reference point for your day. It gives you something to root yourself in. That no matter what happens throughout the day, God is God. So therefore, you should live our life in holy fear, and with an understanding that we are not home yet, having faith and confidence in what we hope for, and assurance about what we do not see. And I just wanted to add one more thing which was in Psalm 37, verse 4. It says, "Take delight in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart." So what it means is that God will fully satisfy our hearts. That when we delight in Him, we will see an aligning of our heart and desires with God's, and so God will fulfill the desires of our life. So this faith and confidence and assurance will naturally be filled by aligning our hearts with God. And this promise that He will give us the desires of our hearts when that happens is just encouragement for that. So so this is day 5, and we have one more day after this covering the sword in the armor series. And so I hope this word was encouraging to you guys and informative, and have a blessed day.